Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Jacobson, and I'm going to be the moderator here today. We have this regional session on green transformation of district heating and cooling session, which is organized by the Central and West Asia Department of ADB in collaboration with Asian Development Bank. It is in collaboration with Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association. We will today provide an overview of clean heating and cooling, taking departure of the activities that has been going on mainly within the Central and West Asia Department, and then make an international outlook. We have a great lineup of speakers here with us today. And to start out the session, I'm very pleased to welcome up Mr. John-Hu Huang, who is the Energy Division Director of the Central and West Asia Department of ADB. So please.
Good afternoon, dear guests, esteemed speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you first of all to Manila and Asian Development Bank headquarters for ACF 2023. And in this session, I'm extremely pleased to see such a great audience attending our panel to discuss the future of the green heating and cooling, which lies in the heart of our sustainable future. The power of collaboration and the synergy of our minds, is a main pillar in our efforts to transform the energy sector, and particularly the heating subsector, into environmentally sustainable and energy efficient solution. We have reached the critical point where the effects of climate change are becoming increasingly evident. ADB recognize the urgency to mitigate these challenges with transformation of the heating system, which, as you know, in our member countries, predominantly rely on fossil fuel, and these contributing to greenhouse gas emissions and exacerbating the global climate crisis. ADB has committed to align our entire operation with Paris Agreement and support its member country to build adaptive capacity and foster climate resilience. So we do appreciate the transformation ahead. It's not an easy one, but with holistic approach and the determination, the success should be inevitable. The revolutionary way always goes through the new technology and innovations, and change is only sustainable if it stands on a firm basis. Therefore, setting up a proper regulatory framework and firm legislative basis seems to be not only vital, but also a logical start. In this session today, you will hear about ADB's effort and the contribution and result achieved in collaboration with the government of the Kazakhstan in paving the way to the transformation of the district heating system in the country through a knowledge support technical assistance titled Supporting Renewable Inclusive Heating Legislation. Although this is just the beginning of a long way, we all agree that the breakthrough brought by this intervention, and we look forward to active discussion over this case to see what lessons can be shared with other countries having similar system and challenges, and also what is the next step government can do to accomplish the changes that is felt by each and every citizens in our beneficiary countries. Let me express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to our esteemed panelists who will share their invaluable insight and experience on green heating technology, policies, and best practices. Their knowledge and experts will help us understand the problem of these innovative solutions and how they can be implemented on a broader scale. And to that end, I encourage all of you to participate and interact with our panel members in this session. So without further ado, let me once again welcome all of you and look forward to active discussion in this session today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yonho Huang. As you heard here, there has been a quite breakthrough with the inclusive heat legislation preparation in Kazakhstan, and that is what we are taking departure from today. Even in the world's second largest district heating sector, China, there is no such regulation in place. And we see many markets around the world where this is missing. So I'm very much looking forward to hear what we can learn from the work that has been done in Kazakhstan. And that is both when it comes to district heating, but actually also when we talk about district cooling, because it's quite important to accelerate the development of such a technology that we would like to say it. When we talk about district heating and cooling, it's more a carrier than it is an energy source or something. It is multi-energy system. So it's quite important for the future when we talk about more integration, decoupling, and so on. With that said, I'm very happy to welcome the next speaker, Mr. Alimjan Turar from the Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan, who has been highly instrumental in this work as well. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alimjan Turar. I'm from Ministry of Energy of Kazakhstan. It's first time for me to be participating in the forum of this scale, and I'm really proud to be the part of this event. So firstly, in that aspect, I want to thank ADB for having us here, for organizing such a grand forum, for participating, for forum for participants from the biggest part of the world. Secondly, I want to thank ADB again for the support and assistance since 2020 on our bumpy way to the bright future with developed heating system in Kazakhstan. As I'm making opening remarks, let me briefly introduce you with the situation in the heating sector of Kazakhstan. The main reasons to make heating legislation for your better understanding of the coming detailed presentation, which will be held by our colleague from Dornier Group. Kazakhstan is the biggest country territory-wise in Central Asia, and we are 9th in the world. So we have like quite a big territory. And our climate could be described as a very hot summers and a very cold winters. So from that, as you understand, heating systems are vital for the survival in Kazakhstan. Like with our neighbors, like Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, we have inherited all the same district heating system from our Soviet past. These systems at the beginning proved to be very effective and functioned quite well last couple of decades since we have got our independence in 1991. But due to the lack of investments associated with the low tariffs and lack of the proper regulation, in some parts we even didn't had any regulated documents. Sector has depreciated. As a result, of last winter, we had quite big accidents in a couple of the cities. The heating system just broke down, and the people over the cold winters, they stayed at home without any heating, and it was a very big situation, and we're still trying to face that problem and trying to look for solutions. again, all of this comes as from our past, from our Soviet past. If you just a second, please. It's first time for me to be presenting, to be participating as a speaker. So again, it comes from our Soviet past. Tariff regulation is very socially sensitive question, especially for the people who came from socialistic system. Many people here, I think, they understand what I mean. I mean, in a social system, government has to make everything, and people doesn't have to pay anything. So people with that mindset, they don't understand why we have to get like higher tariffs and stuff. So as a result, we have this depreciated system. In addition to that, we have few main other institutional problems, such as disorder in powers of state bodies, missing of proper planning of the development of heating systems, and legislative gaps. In terms of state body powers, nowadays we have 4 state bodies who are responsible for the heating system sector. It's our ministry as a Ministry of Energy, who's responsible for generating heat power, Ministry of Industry, who's responsible for transportation and consumption, and our tariff regulator as a part of Ministry of Economy, who's responsible for tariff regulation, obviously. And as a 4th part, we have local municipalities who are responsible for controlling all the exploitational part or technical part. So as you can see, it is really messed up powers of state bodies, and by this law, by the draft of the law, we have actually consolidated part of it in our ministry. So we are taking all the part of the responsibility for transportation system to our ministry. So and controlling technical control part, we're also taking to our ministry from local municipalities. So we wanted to fix this, and if you want to change something, you have to write and change the rules that are applicable and helpful. Despite being, as I described before, despite being the responsible state body for the, despite not being the responsible state body for the whole sector, we have initiated development of a new legislation that would help to put heating system in order. In 2020, with the support of ADB and the help of Dornier Group, we have started our project on making new heating legislation. In these few years, there were a lot of problems that we have successfully tackled. So our draft law is now in the parliament and being revised by parliament members. However, we have to admit that our proposals concerning tariff policy have not been supported. Not all our proposals have been supported by other government members. Despite this, we will try our best in parliament hearings to change the situation in order to guarantee economically justified tariff levels with the address support for the people in need. I think I would stop here to not to spoil the detailed presentation of Ronald. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anchanturar. And as we heard here, it's been a bumpy road. Thank you very much for the openness about the work that you have been through. And it's definitely, I can imagine, has been a challenge. On the other hand, if it can be done in Kazakhstan, it is very likely that it can also be replicated and adopted to other markets. So really looking forward to dig deeper into this aspect. Now, when we move forward, I would like to introduce the set of speakers that we will have here in the morning. So I will ask Mr. Peter Lundberg to go to the stage, Ronald Rost as well, and we have Aymar Askarzadeh also taking a seat on the desk there, and we have Laura Williamson as well. Please give a hand to the speakers. And before we dig into the details of the works done in Kazakhstan, we will get an international outlook of district heating first from Mr. Peter Lumberg, the Executive Director of Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I'm happy to be here in Manila again after a few years of online event, the Asia Clean Energy Forum. So my name is Peter Lundberg. I'm the Executive Director of the Asia Pacific Urban Energy Association. We're based in Bangkok, Thailand, but we have activities in the Asia Pacific region promoting sustainable urban energy, including district energy. And I will try to, I have a short amount of time, 10 minutes, but I will try to give an outlook on district energy in the Asia Pacific region. So let's click. Yeah. First, I just want to show this graph that shows the final energy consumption in the world. And because often when we discuss the energy transition, climate targets, how to achieve them, we tend to talk about power and transportation. But as you can see in this graph, thermal energy is actually 51% of the final energy consumption. So we normally try to show this graph, because heating and cooling is not often talked about, or as often talked about as other sectors. So it's very important to talk about that. So when we look to create sustainable energy for our cities, we need to look at from a top-down approach, from a holistic point of view. We need to take in account energy conservation, save energy, not to use energy. We need to look at the most energy efficient solutions that is available to reduce energy consumption. We have to recover energy that is produced by, in cities through all our activities or from industry. We need to integrate renewable energy, either, from solar PV systems inside the city, but of course, not all the energy consumed in cities come from produced in the cities, comes from outside the city as well. But we need to integrate more renewable energy. Co and tri-generation are good because you produce electricity, heating and cooling at the same time. You have very high utilization of the fuel input, maybe over 80%. And district energy is important. Why? Well, as Michael said, district energy is transporting all different kinds of energy produced by different sources that can be upgraded over time when new technology is available. So district energy, I would say, is an enabler both to provide renewable electricity, but also heating and cooling. Okay, this is probably need to look back a little bit. It's a little bit small, but I would just show a few this slide showing maybe a little bit of the history of district energy or district heating, mostly here. So actually, we have used district heating quite a long time, started in the late 1880s, actually, with local district heating networks utilizing steam. That then evolved in the 1930s to pressurized hot water systems and large production plants built on site, let's say power plant stations. And then in the third generation, in about around the 1980s, we introduced pre-insulated pipes and also compact, efficient, industrialized substations. We also introduced more, metering and monitoring of the district heating systems. And the fourth generation that started in 2020. If I go back to the third generation here from the 1980s, we also started to add more heat sources, including, large scale solar, biomass, waste energy or industry surplus energy, heat storage we had earlier. And then for the fourth generation, that has continued with utilization of waste heat from data centers. We have introduced seasonal heat storage to store heat for half of the year until the summer. We introduced geothermal. We introduced two-way district heating, or basically making some heat production of from, let's say, supermarkets, or that can actually sell excess heat to the district heating network. Yeah, you can see there are many examples there. Also, when you connect district heating with district cooling, basically utilizing heat pumps, the hot and the cold side, for district heating and district cooling at the same time. So as you can see here, there's been quite a long development and lots of improvement over the years. And as you see in the graph here, the energy efficiency have greatly improved over the years. And also the temperatures for both the primary and secondary side has gone down, slowly and or significantly. So that's a short introduction to where we are today. And for district cooling, you might not be aware, but it also existed quite for a long time. It started in North America in the 1960s. And in America, both district heating and cooling is utilized a lot in campuses, in university campuses, hospitals, and these kind of applications. But there are more than 400 district cooling systems in North America. In Europe, the first district cooling system was introduced in Paris in 1967, supplying cooling and heating to the La Défense commercial district. Today, there are about 150 district cooling systems in Europe. And the first district energy, both cooling and heating system in Asia Pacific, was in Osaka Expo in Japan in 1970. And there are about 150 district energy systems in operation in Japan today. And in China, I think, yes, I have an update to this number. I think in China, there are actually more than 11,000 district heating systems and 200 district cooling systems today. In Southeast Asia, there are more than 40 district cooling systems in operation. I will show you, actually, I show another slide, a bit more graphic. I wanted to show this graph, this picture showcasing, this is Beijing in 2014 and today, and showcasing the difference in air pollution. And I think going back in history, this was the reason, district heating was introduced to societies, basically to remove a lot of small local boilers, often use coal, or it could be even, biomass, but actually removing all the emission sources, like to a centralized location, maybe outside the city. So basically moving away emissions, at the same time, of course, improving efficiency and other things. But so that was really the start of everything. And I think that still applies today in certain to a context. And for cooling, it's not directly maybe air pollution, it's indirectly air pollution. But if you look at all the ACs that we use in our buildings, in the bedrooms and in a tall building, they actually emit refrigerants, and refrigerants are one cause of global warming. So we have to think about cooling can actually, in this way too, cooling can be applied. I'm not sure this clock is correct, but I will try to speed up. Okay. So overview district energy in Asia Pacific. It's the largest growing heating sector in the world. It's the largest growing cooling sector. We have quite a long history for district heating, especially if you look at countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, but also China, Japan as well. Looking into district cooling in countries like India, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand is more recent. District cooling in Malaysia is quite developed. There are more than 30 district cooling systems in Malaysia. In Singapore, there are also quite a mature district cooling market. But of course, there are huge opportunities available now, especially as the region is moving to net zero targets, and all countries have, working on renewing their energy policies. I think, we believe that district energy is an important part to get there, to reach net zero targets in 2050. Yeah, so this is showing the district cooling systems that in Asia, in Southeast Asia, 41 in operation and 12, under construction. Malaysia is by far the largest market, followed by Singapore. So there's a lot of opportunities here to develop more district cooling systems. India has about 8 in operation and another 6 under planning. And of course, India has tremendous growth in both population and economy is growing rapidly. And, we see movement, also in the investment in renewable energy and also district cooling. So huge opportunities for India to apply district cooling. Yeah, I think I will skip this as I have a little bit ahead of time. I just want to mention a little bit short about the rising cooling demand. Go back. So as you saw the graph in the beginning, that heating and cooling is 51% of the final energy consumption. Cooling produces about 10% of the world's greenhouse gases today. And about 80% of that is from energy consumption. Another 20 is due to leaks of refrigerants. So, and as you can see in the graph here, the growth of cooling, space cooling has been tremendous, and China, Southeast Asia, India is a huge part of that. And, this cooling demand will really increase over time. So we sometimes call, the cooling is the elephant in the waiting room. So we really need to look into the best solutions to meet this growing cooling demand and the energy demand. So I think I will stop there. I have more slides, but I think I have to stop there because my time is out. But you're welcome to let me know if you have any questions later.
Thank you very much, Peter, for giving this outlook on not only district heating, but also district cooling. We will now move forward, and I will ask Mr. Ronald Ross, the head of international sales of Dornier Power and Heat, to take the stand, where we will now come back and dig into the details of the supporting renewable technology inclusive heat supply legislation done in Kazakhstan. The stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from my side. I'm happy to present insights of a project which we did during the last 3 years, financed by the Asian Development Bank, financed by the Clean Energy Fund, and financed by the Republic of Korea in the Republic of Kazakhstan for creating a heat supply legislation which is inclusive of renewable technology. And my presentation is structured in 3 parts. I will shortly introduce Dornier Group to you. I will shed some light on a project summary, and I will give a little, let's say, outlook on the way forward for the heating sector in Kazakhstan. Dornier Group is a designing and engineering company, classical consulting engineers, with, let's say, 5 business groups addressing the needs of modern day. So we are working in mobility, in water sector, and largest part is energy sector. In that case, covered by nuclear services, decommissioning, power and heat, where I am from, and also renewables, where 2 of my colleagues are sharing here or participating in the session. The group itself is existing since 60 years. We have around about 2,000 people in the group and doing more than 1,000 projects a year. And we have quite a number of subsidiaries and companies. And in Kazakhstan, we have, for instance, an office which was quite helpful for this project. Okay. What I should say, this project was specific for Kazakhstan. I mean, it was mentioned that Kazakhstan is a huge country. It has harsh ambient conditions. And so the experience collected here may not be applicable for every country, but it was quite a complex task in itself. And as Alimjan mentioned, we made some experiences step by step when going through the whole process. So actually, we started with, let's say, a data collection exercise, looking at 14 different cities and towns, because heating supply is a very local business. Yeah, you cannot do it for the whole country. Like for energy sector, it's a very local business. And so we did a selection of larger, smaller, medium cities. And the good thing for Kazakhstan is that this is a country with, let's say, a highly developed, centralized district heating systems. And in such a case, it's always very beneficial to apply renewables. So you can introduce renewables at a higher speed than if you have a lot of, let's say, individual homes. So the takeaways from this sector review, we did a technical and the legal due diligence. We found, let's say, there is a substantial weakness in terms of reliability, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of sustainability. And the information which we gathered, we compared with international experience. You see the different countries: Denmark, Germany, Lithuania, Korea, and Sweden. And we looked at different topics: legal, regulatory topics, efficiency of, let's say, application of technologies, type of planning, and so on. And as a result of the, let's say, analysis and gap analysis, we recognized 9 main problems. They are mentioned here. The number 1 problem was the lack of strategic goals and plans. So we started with this. Also, what has been mentioned already by Alimjan, the deficit of investments over a period of about 20 years was also very much contributing to the situation in the sector. The lack of responsibility and the lack of information among the various stakeholders was another topic. Many of the heat supply entities were loss-making, and there was an inefficiency of their operations. Also, we recognized inefficiency of spending the available budget for this city or town. Another topic was, let's say, the lack of instruments for resolving local economic and technical problems, let's say, with technical standards, failure to regulate relationship between different actors. That was also mentioned by Alimjan, different entities being responsible for different parts of the whole heat supply thing. And finally, a lack of mechanisms to implement energy efficiency and renewables. And that was the starting point. We had to find solutions for these topics. And we asked ourselves 2 main questions. So what areas of international experience would be most relevant for the challenges in Kazakhstan? And the other question was, what would be the main components for the new legislation addressing these challenges? And you see on the right-hand side some color-coded graphics, which is basically just giving keywords to address the problems which I showed in the previous slide. The content of the new law on heating, which we developed, was covering several areas in order to properly address these shortcomings and deficits which we noted. So just to briefly inform you, starting in a clockwise manner, the strategic objectives and the basic principles were defined. We also, let's say, outlined in the law how the sector should be organized, which ministries or institutions have which power. We introduced the legal framework as a total one. We provided information about the technical development and the planning process. Also, there was a need to, let's say, define the changeover from the current situation or the transition from the current situation to the new situation in a couple of years to address sustainability, energy efficiency, and renewable energy topics. Also, price regulation and social protection of vulnerable groups was a very important issue. And finally, the regulatory methods and powers had to be, let's say, shown in the law. On this slide, you can see the timeline and the major milestones on this journey. So on the upper part of the slide, you can see the milestones, and on the lower part, you can see the work, the legwork, which needed to be done in order to accomplish these milestones. So actually, we started the project in summer 2020. Then we prepared the technical due diligence. And with the ministry, we were discussing how to do this process. Ministry was very helpful, sending letters to all the entities, municipal entities and akimats, informing them that we would come and visit them and ask questions and need information. So this whole process needed some time to do it in a proper way. So actually, we started in October 2020 with this technical and legal due diligence. And once we had the first results from that, we started to draft the law concept, which we submitted to the ministry. This was discussed, and in a consultative process, it was made public to various stakeholders. Then after we got the feedback from that, we started to prepare the draft law. We also started the draft legislation and regulations. And again, this was a very interactive process with a lot of stakeholder engagement. You can see here on the left-hand side some explanations of abbreviations, and you see quite a number of terms. So we were, for instance, working, let's say, or interacting with a working group involving different ministries, Ministry of Energy, of course, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Justice, Tariff Agency, and so on. There have been, let's say, a Republican Budget Commission, Interagency Commission, and so on. So, and you can imagine that this process of integrating various stakeholders with different opinion were quite time-consuming, but we really managed to get them on board. And what I can say, as part of this process, we designed also some, let's say, knowledge products. Initially, the project was envisaged in such a way that we shall do 3 workshops as part of the project, introducing the results from the technical due diligence, for instance, having another workshop on renewable energy technologies. By the way, we produced quite a comprehensive catalog on renewable energy technologies applicable for heating purposes, because there was a great skepticism among the practical people on the ground who don't really believe that you can do it with renewable sources. And in addition, we recognize there is a need for additional information, partly on technical topics, partly on planning process, also partly on tariff or economic subjects. And the ministry expressed the request to ADB, and ADB agreed to it to finance a separate work. We did actually some number of 14 training workshops, it was webinars basically, which were participated by around about 160 people maximum. In minimum, it was 40 people. And we did quite in a structured way. We informed the various stakeholders from, let's say, top level to municipalities, what the new legislation will include and what they are, let's say, kind of expected to do. And we really received, let's say, good feedback on that. And ADB finally asked us to use these webinars and get them translated into English, because there might be a need to use this as a knowledge product for ADB in further projects. Now, what would be the way forward for the Kazakhstan heating sector? What I shall mention, when you do such a project for the whole country, you need to consider the various stakeholders or the various, let's say, levels of heating systems. And you can see here on the left-hand side, we considered the so-called public heating systems, so the centralized systems. We also considered local district heating systems, smaller ones, which are being fed by some industry nearby or whatever, and also individual systems. And this is quite a challenge to bring everything together in one law, because they have different requirements. So we needed to be not too specific, but to provide, let's say, the requirements for them. And we expect that the sector will then move now from more, let's say, traditional sources of using fossil fuels to renewable energy sources in the future. But of course, this will take time. And one of the problems which I mentioned initially, the problem number 2, was the deficit of investments. And you can see here on this diagram on the left-hand side, let's say, at the beginning of 1990s, basically with the start of the independence of Kazakhstan, the district heating sector was quite on par with international terms and was quite functioning well. But due to the underspending of investments, gradually, year by year, the sector became, let's say, in a different shape. And this was one of the topics which we had to address in the law, to encourage, let's say, a combination of different funds from the budget, also increasing the tariffs, because the tariffs must be not only cost covering, but also encourage new investments. And we wanted also to bring in, let's say, new investors. One of the topics is public-private partnerships, where we prepared a special paper on, and which should be encouraged by the law. And of course, finally, green funding. And another topic, which I also mentioned already, finding mechanisms for implementing energy efficiency and renewable energies. And one of the tools for doing that is that each of the, let's say, regional authorities which are responsible for or which got responsibility for the heat planning, they have to do a heat master plan. They will be given 2 years' time to develop that heat master plan, and this master plan should at least cover a 5-year period, ideally a 10-year period, outlining what is the current status, what are the problems, how to go forward, what investments will be needed, for which measures these investments will be used of, identifying sources of financing. And so this is the responsibility of the local communities. They will give it to the ministry, or the ministry actually. They will give their comments, either they approve it or they will give it back to the municipality again. They have to revise it until it is adopted, and then of course the tariffs also need to be approved as part of this master plan, and then it is needs to be implemented. And this is again one topic which was not initially considered in the project, but the ministry requested us to do a pilot master plan just to show the methodology, how to do it, and to give, let's say, something at hand to the people on the ground, so that they have some guidance how to do it. Yeah, and more or less at the end of my presentation, so I could only shed light on a few subjects of this very complex project. So you're more than welcome to contact me. Here on the slide, you see also my colleague Kanine Silpa Archer, who is our director responsible for the Southeast Asian area. So feel invited to approach us and ask your questions. Yeah, thank you very much. That's from my side.
Thank you very much, Ronald, for that quick introduction. We can really see the complexity. I mean, it is about the legal framework, the political context, it's a technical aspects, a quite complex project, which we probably could have a whole workshop just focusing around. Very interesting. Looking forward to the Q&A sessions here also. Exactly. And you mentioned you already had it there in the project. So yeah, that's really great. It provides quite some thoughts on how to move forward. And I think it's safe to say that localization is quite important. I mean, all countries and markets will be quite different, but at least it gives a good indication on the approach to take anyway, and then a lot of experiences to learn from. So thank you very much. Next up, I would like to introduce Elmar Asgarzadeh, Tech Director of Climacell from Azerbaijan, who will talk about energy efficiency for the energy transition, reducing reliance on conventional cooling systems through innovative technologies. Please take the stand.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elmar. I'm from Azerbaijan, and my background is chemical engineering. I'm new in the innovation sector. I'm a founder of Climacell, the company. This is a startup company. We are right now changing the future of cooling system with advanced materials. We can start with the big problem. Buildings are responsible for 40% of global CO2 emission to the atmosphere. And the main area of this part is a cooling. In order to solve the decarbonization, the help decarbonizing the buildings, we have to solve the energy consumption problem with cooling. Because lots of money are used for AC to cool the spaces. The temperature is very important for our health, our productivity, and that's why we have to solve this problem immediately. In recent years, we have seen encouraging the results of lots of investment have been directed towards the decarbonization of buildings. And also each year, lots of countries are joining this trend because they understand that efficiency of the cooling of the buildings are very important, and they understand their benefits. But unfortunately, we have to face the reality because due to the Paris Agreement, we have to reach the net zero until 2050. But for now, we are seeing the increasing the gap between where we are and where we're supposed to be. That's why we have to solve this problem with the hard work and also with efficient solutions. The need for cooling has been increasing, and in the next years, it will be exponentially increase because lots of buildings are built and the number of population is increasing. That's why we have to balance this trend. There are lots of technologies in the world to combat with the energy problem. I mean the cooling of the buildings. One of them are phase change material that we introduce. This kind of materials can change the cooling of the buildings. Imagine you are in the building that are covered with ice, but eventually you will get tight because of freezing. But if we use the phase change materials, we can design it in any temperature, human comfort temperature. This kind of material can absorb lots of heat during the heat time. For example, in the summer when temperature is increasing, that kind of material absorb the heat. And at night, when temperature drops, this material release the absorbed heat and achieve the comfort temperature. I think there's a problem presentation. All right. For 2 years, we have been working on the new phase change materials. The material itself is composed of the patent pending inside the material and polymer composition. You can ask that why you use a polymer because, for example, we can go back to the ice example. If you use ice, it will melt and your building will be water. This is also case in the phase change material, but we use the special polymer material that keep the phase change material in the context of interlinks. And in this way, we prevent leakage and provide better solution for the cooling of the buildings. How our panels, actually we have incorporated our phase change materials into the ceiling and wall panels. In this case, you can see how the ceiling panels works and cool down the buildings. We install the panels or change the conventional ceiling panels, replace it with our Climasil panels. And in daytime, when temperature increasing in the office, in the restaurant, or other spaces, the material absorb the heat. In the peak time, it reduces the temperature. At night, when temperature drops, it releases the absorbed heat back and become ready for next day. In this way, we help the buildings to cool down. Right now, this topic, I mean, the incorporating phase change material into the buildings are very popular, but there are lots of challenges. First is, as I said, leakage. The second is biodegradability, because lots of material are not good for environment, and also they are not efficient as they say. But we have used the bio-based phase change material, which is derived from different kind of bio-based sources, and we use the biopolymer to incorporate it with our phase change material. We use the desired temperature for buildings. The exact temperature is changing with the locations. For example, for Baku, Azerbaijan, we have designed 23 degrees Celsius melting point because this comfort temperature. But for other places, especially for hot climate, for example, India, we have to design the higher temperature with active cooling system together. With a value proposition, actually, you can ask that this material is very the material is very should be very costly. Yes, its price is higher than conventional. Can we go back? Okay. The material cost is higher than conventional panels, but there's a advantages. After using these panels in 2.5 years, you can get payback all the deducted from energy cost, and after that, annually you get the annual profit by using the panels. We have done a projects with laboratory in the laboratory, and also we have done a pilot projects, 2 projects in Azerbaijan. One is with a Baku Hayro school. We have incorporated our panels in the study room and have observed the performance over the 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, we have reduced the overall cost that cooling of the this room by 22%. Yeah, we are actually working towards the decarbonizing the building. We help communities in Azerbaijan and also in different parts of the world to decarbonize the buildings, save energy, and we are actively working towards the this SDGs. That's it. Thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elmar, for that. I think beside the innovative phase change material and the interesting pilot projects, I think it's also interesting to hear the importance about building codes that you mentioned. I think that's quite important when we move along here to realize that those have to allow the integration of heating and cooling solutions as well. Yeah, thank you very much for that. We should go from Azerbaijan and move east towards Mongolia. So I will ask Dagva Biambatuya to join us at the moment on the stage and to talk about clean heating in Mongolia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Biambatuya. I'm Energy Officer at Mongolia Resident Mission of ADB. So I'm so happy to present here. It's my first experience of attending and presenting at ACF. So I will be talking about ADB's current clean heating works in Mongolia. So Mongolia is actually one of the coldest country, as many of you might know. According to World Atlas, it's the 2nd coldest countries in the world. So heat production and heat is extremely important for Mongolia. As you can see from the slide, 70% of the total household consumption on energy is used for heating throughout the year, and during coldest months of a year, it can be even up to 90%. So it's very important. But on the other hand, in Mongolia, we are purely relying on only coal based heating. So using the technologies such as CHPs, central thermal plants, as well as heat-only boilers or regular household stoves. So Ulaanbaatar, everyone knows that UP is one of the most air polluted cities in the world because of using this coal for heating. So this photo I took this year in January. So when sky is blue, you can clearly see the air pollution layer covering the entire Ulaanbaatar city. But on the other hand, in other urban settlements rather than Ulaanbaatar or major cities, in smaller urban settlements, what we call in SOMs, we use heat-only boiler for district heating. So as you can see from the first figure, but it's really polluting, and the working condition for the operators are really hard, and these heat-only boilers are really taking people's health at risk in remote areas. And Ulaanbaatar, not only Ulaanbaatar and other urban settlements, all of them are like designed like to prevent for wind. So it's surrounded by higher elevation areas or mountains. So air pollution accumulates over time, and it's hard for the air pollution to escape. So we really need to shift to cleaner technologies. So from this figure, you can see what the map of ADB works on clean heating. So it's in the Western region, all of them are or just the slums or smaller cities. So we are doing this works through 3 different projects. So it's indicated with different colors like green, blue, red in the figure. So under these 3 projects, this slide is just aiming to give a brief insight on what we are doing, what the projects that we are funding. So in case of scale of focus, the projects are focusing on individual buildings as well as clusters of buildings or district heating. So actually currently already implemented projects are on the individual building sites, and we are trying to shift to district heating. So in terms of the technologies used, those 3 projects used a shallow ground source heat pump, open and closed loop, and solar thermal collectors for heating and hot water, or injecting the excess energy into the ground during summer, and aiming to support the shallow ground source heat pump during heating seasons. So blues are actually those which are already existing physically. And those indicated in orange are what we are going to build in the near term. So it includes energy efficiency retrofit, and air to water source heat pump, as well as medium depth ground source heat pump. So aside from these physical or hard technologies, we are also taking care for the capacity development for various stakeholders, as well as awareness raising campaign for general public for energy efficiency and air pollution risk for their health. So the name of the 3 projects are listed here. The first one is the Upscale Renewable Energy Sector Project, under which we have almost 12 sub-projects. 5 of them are focused on clean heating, which is using the technologies shallow ground source heat pump and combined with solar thermal. So this project became effective in 2019. And the project aimed at providing clean heating for hospitals, kindergartens, and schools to maximize the benefit of the project. The second one is on the just became effective recently this year. In March, the implementation started. The name is Renewable Heating Demonstration in Remote Areas. Under this project, 3 some hospitals will be energy efficiently retrofitted, and air source heat pump will be providing energy. And the third one is actually transaction technical assistance. The project name is Supporting Renewable Energy Development. The target approval for this year, for this project by board approval, is next year Q1. So under which we have this medium depth ground source heat pump sub-project for district heating. So of course, we are adopting new technologies to remote places. So of course, we encountered some challenges. This slide is providing examples and what we faced and how it's being resolved. So for this kindergarten, ground source heat pump system were installed, and together with solar thermal collectors. And this system was commissioned last year, 2022. But during the first year of its operation, it was temporarily reverted. The building heating was reverted temporarily for heat-only boiler. There were like several reasons, because even the new technology was already there and operating normally. Subsidy for coal was still there. But on the other hand, budget for increased electricity bill was absent. And there was also some problems related to with lack of on-site O&M capacity, as well as the existing building was low in case of energy efficiency, even it was a new building. So in order to prevent the similar problems for this project or the other sub-projects, Ministry of Energy has signed memorandum of understanding with the local governor's offices to prevent these kind of issues and increase their local ownership or commitment to the new technology. So this is the second project that I previously mentioned. Renewable heating demonstration in remote areas just became effective recently. With that project, differently than the ground source heat pump systems, we are more focusing on adopting scalable clean heating technology. Shallow ground source heat pumps are very specific to ground conditions. So with this air source heat pump, we are hoping to adopt in a greater scale. Apart from just the technical or adopting hard technology, we are also greatly taking care on the capacity and awareness raising issues for this project. There are actually 3 outputs of that project. 2 of them are focused on capacity building and awareness raising for different stakeholders. Actually, all of those 3 projects are being hugely financed with grant. So last but not least, this project, the Transaction Technical Assistance Project supporting renewable energy development. So under which, as I mentioned before, there is a sub-project for district heating of Har Horang city. So the technology going to be used is medium depth ground source heat pump. So differently than the shallow ground source heat pump, we have to drill up to like 2 or 3 kilometers into the ground. So this technology is not site specific, can be implemented to anywhere. So it has a great potential of replication or scaling up in the future. This project will be the first in Mongolia, if successfully get approval from the board and implemented. So this table is showing the comparison between the medium depth ground source heat pump and shallow ground source heat pump in terms of the some cost implications. So for shallow ground source heat pump, to have the equal capacity of system, we have to have like 440 wells drilled. But with the medium depth ground source heat pump, it's only 4 wells, so not so much land is needed. And drilling cost per meter is much higher for medium depth one, but because it the total drilling length is significantly less than the shallow ground source heat pump, we will end up having much lower cost for drilling. So this is with this technology, we are trying to shift from focusing on individual building heatings to district heating. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tuija. It's great to see the work that you're doing in Mongolia also, even though the conditions are similar to Kazakhstan, but also there are quite some differences. It's great to see that you're developing district heating solutions also in the remote areas, which I know is also meant to be replicated. It's really great to see, and also that you have found the technologies that are feasible to be replicated. I'm sure we will hear more from Dan after the break about more clean heating technologies specifically. With that, we move forward, and I will ask Peter to take the stand and have a dialogue with Laura from REN21, who have just published a renewable energy publication that is highly relevant to district energy. And yeah, please get going, Peter.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome, Laura. I'll just give you a short introduction. Laura is a Director of Membership in Institutional Partnerships at REN21, based in Paris. Yeah, so we invited Laura here to give kind of an introduction to the latest renewables global status report. So to have a little discussion about current developments and especially related to heating and cooling. So welcome, Laura. And to start off, maybe you can give a short introduction to the report that you just launched yesterday, right?
Yeah, it's fresh out of the printer, so to speak. So some of you may recognize this report in the sense that it's got the band. It's usually published around about this time of year, 300 pages. It's a real tome that, you know, you sort of have to cart around with you. So this year, really reflective of developments across the industry, we've actually divided the report up into 5 pieces. So this is only the second of 5. And I have handy dandy bookmarks available for people who are interested with the QR code. But the first one was on demand, really looking at key sectors that where renewables can really support energy demand, looking at transport, heating, so with buildings, transport buildings, industry, and agriculture. This one that was just released yesterday is on the supply. So what is the supply side looking like? How is the supply side developing? What are the installed capacities, you know, and what technologies? And this relates to what we're going to discuss here today. The other sector, the other reports will be looking at grid and infrastructure, transmission, which is very, very important. The economic and social value creation of renewables, which I think also fits into this discussion today, and then a sort of a global overview. But if we look very much at the supply side, what did we really see in 2022? The background for it was very much the policy crisis, right? We had inflation, we had highest energy prices since 2008. We also had the energy crisis was exacerbated with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But then we also had opportunities, really provided some good drivers for renewables and renewable penetration, very much around energy security, helping to address with poverty alleviation, but also very importantly with energy access. From a technology perspective, from an installed capacity perspective, we saw an incredible boom in the PV sector. PV actually passed the 1 terawatt installed capacity mark in 2022, which is huge. Wind also growing, but unfortunately decreased a bit, predominantly because of supply chain and material issues. So we have fantastic growth in the PV and wind sector. What's concerning, and which also affects to a certain amount the conversation here today, is the other technologies are not growing at the necessary pace. We're not seeing the growth in geothermal, in bioenergy, and well, I mean, hydro is still a leader, but perhaps even in ocean energy. And the reason why this is concerning is that we need all technologies to reach 2030 and 2050 goals, whether they be climate ambition, but also for development, economic development goals. So I think it's fair to say that renewable electricity really is driving the shift in the energy supply at the moment. And where things are really, really dire is in the heating sector. So renewable penetration, just to give you an example, renewable energy penetration in the power sector is now at 30%. But electricity, well, power, electricity being the carrier, is only about 20% of our total final energy consumption. Heat is 50% of total final energy consumption, but the penetration of renewables in renewable heat is only 2.5%, has only grown by 2.5% over a decade. So I know most of you might be engineers or very good at math, but the numbers don't add up. We are never going to get to the deep carbonization that is needed unless we start to address the issues of the heating sector.
Yeah, exactly. We saw in the graph earlier that, but heating and cooling is really a key in the energy transition. But do you see some encouragement at all? Or is it just,
Is it just bad news?
yeah, do you have any good news for us for the heating
For
sector?
the heating sector, no. I mean, there is good news. I think a question was raised actually in the panel that Peter and I were on yesterday, where somebody said, you're talking about heating, but what about cooling? And I think, let's take the cooling. It's not really being applied to district cooling per se, but we need deep electrification, which means we need to electrify as much as we possibly can with renewables. And then, look at what other carriers can be in the form of heating and fuels. So from the cooling aspect, it's really going to be about electrifying. What can we electrify? How do we electrify homes, buildings, within the industrial sector as much as we possibly can? And then shift the focus, or in parallel have the focus for heating. The current penetration of renewables in the heating sector is 9.9%. So I mentioned the 2.5% increase. That's the increase that's happened over 10 years. But we're still at less than 10% of the 50% with renewables. So there's a lot of potential there. So,
Do you see any specific barriers? I mean, there must be a low-hanging fruits,
Yes.
Do you have any examples?
Yes, lots
yeah.
of them. No.
Yeah.
One of them are policies and targets. We really are not seeing the support from government policy to help with the penetration of renewables in the heating sector. I'll give you an example. If you look at the power sector globally in 2022, there were 174 policies and targets compared to 46 in the heating sector. So, the level of penetration is really marked with regards to the policy.
What do you think that is, that there's so much focus on electricity?
Because it's easy. It's easy. I shouldn't say it's easy. That's being a bit flippant. It's centralized. I believe it was someone that spoke ahead. The thing about heating is it's decentralized, right? You have small providers, you have, individual households, you have buildings, you have offices. And so it's a very difficult sector to really address. And I think also too, a huge problem is the persistent fossil fuel subsidies. It's the elephant in the room. Until we create a level playing field,
right,
we're not going to move.
Right. Do you have any specific updates for the Asia Pacific region in terms of from the report, or in regards to heating and cooling?
Well, in the Asia Pacific region, they are really leading with regards to uptake of solar PV. So 63% of the installed capacities that occurred in 2022 happened in Asia. So there's a lot of momentum there. A lot of it being driven by China, yes, but also other countries. You've got India, you've got Pakistan, you've got Indonesia and the Philippines with around geothermal. So there is a lot of momentum here. And there is also a lot of, hopefully, political momentum on the climate side, which is the need to decarbonize. The region is heavily dependent on coal in particular. And for countries to meet their NDCs, their nationally determined contributions, they've really got to crack the fossil fuel issue. And renewables are here with the potential, with the talent, with the infrastructure to really help replace that.
Yeah, can you share a little bit how you are working from REN21's point of view? I know you, I mean, you have these reports, but are you also working to influence policymakers and, yeah, try to kind of help the shift to renewables?
The way we work with this is we are a multi-stakeholder network. So we are a network of networks. So we work with organizations like yourself, with governments who are in the region to facilitate this exchange, facilitate this knowledge, and to also do what you're doing here today, which is exchange stories and experiences between sectors, but also between governments, because it's by learning what has happened in Mongolia that might work in, Azerbaijan, or could work in Sweden, or what's happening in Iceland, might be relevant, is really important, because policymakers may have great intention, but they have a huge responsibility. And it's very, they need to make sure that what they're working on and what they're developing will continue to provide the energy resources they need for their population. So by understanding how others have addressed the issue and really exchanging on that front, it helps to sort of shape the responses in a way where they can come back and build on other knowledge.
Right. And is there any specific action that we should take, to really speed up the development? I mean, in an event like this today, I think we talked about it yesterday as well. We are all already believers, all of us. We know what the problems are, what it needs to be done, but how do we, access policymakers, and how do we make them understand? At the same time, is there a need to get the private and public sector together to kind of showcase what can be done? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have several. I think, exchanges like this are really important, again, for, hearing and exchanging and networking and finding out who's doing what. I would also encourage the sector to really build on the energy crisis. I know that sounds a bit opportunistic, but there is a real window of opportunity now. There is an opportunity with regards to energy security, which concerns every single country. There is a real concern with regards to health and air pollution, as we just saw with in Mongolia, the latest presenter. And there is also a huge push from the whole energy access, energy equity issue. And the developments that we're seeing in the renewable power sector are encouraging. There's a huge potential for the heat. And I'm definitely seeing, it's taking time, but there's definitely a movement. I was at ASEF 4 years ago, so pre-COVID, but the difference in 4 years of the conversation is remarkable. It's really changed. And I think what has to happen now is the sector, whether they be, the producers or, the maintainers of a district heating system or heating systems, as well as the companies, to really show how together they can meet the government's needs of providing the heating services for their country.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, especially with the energy crisis and people really feel the increase of prices. Their wallets are affected, so they have an opinion. They have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
To their politicians. So the politicians might take action. Now, let's hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Laura, for coming here and introducing us to the report. Maybe you can repeat where we can find it, and if
blatant promotion. I love it.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's www.ren21.net. But I do have these bookmarks with the QR code. And just one other thing, just to say thank you for the invitation. I would also encourage the fact that the heating sector has the opportunity really to diversify. You've got heat pumps, solar PV for solar thermal, there's bioenergy, there's waste to heat, and also storage. And so by showing the multitude, the versatility of heat, I think that is also very attractive to policymakers because you're showing the adaptability, which increases resilience, which is also really important.
Perfect. The solutions are already here, so we just have to implement them. Yeah. Thank you very much, Laura, and back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Laura and Peter. And I think it's one important message here. Often we hear solar or wind, deep geothermal or shallow geothermal. We heard we need all technologies. So we really have to move forward with renewables. I think that is a very strong message to bring with us. We will now move to a break. There will be coffee and water and tea and such outside. And then we will be back in 30 minutes where we will continue with the remaining presentations and also with the Q&A session in the end. So big hand to the speakers of the first part of the session. Thank you very much, all of you.
Renewable energy, energy efficiency, and district cooling. So because of this activity today, I'm going to talk a bit more about district cooling than heating, although I will talk a bit about both as well, because the topic of today is to showcase some projects that ENGIE has developed worldwide and that could hopefully inspire some of us to develop similar projects, similar model in West and South Asia. And also I knew that my fellows from Kazakhstan and Mongolia would talk a bit more about district heating. So that's why I'm focusing a bit more on cooling. So just allow me to give you a few, I think we've seen that in the previous presentation, so I repeat again, but it's good to repeat the same message on why we are talking today about district cooling, because cooling demand is booming. I have a few numbers to show you. So 30% by 2050, 30% of the electricity used in building will be coming from space cooling. I think we've seen before that today it is about 18%. So there will be this growth just per building. 70% of the population is expected to live in cities by 2050. If I'm not mistaken, today we are around 55% of people living in urban area. So by 2050, there will be about 2 billion more people living in urban area where district heating and cooling makes sense. So there is really opportunities coming for us for those technology. 300% of the energy requirements for cooling demand will grow by 2050. I think the baseline is not today, it's like 2016, 2017, but still the jump is huge. And this is global. Just for Asian region and Latin America, we are expecting for the same cooling demand a jump of 625%. So we are talking about a topic that has better to be properly managed in the coming years and decades if we don't want its impact on sustainability and climate change to follow the same trend. So why district cooling? Okay, so the common benefit of district cooling, I'm sure again you are aware of those, but I found those numbers always impressive, so I like to show them. 50% of improvement on energy efficiency versus standalone. This is what we could expect. I'm not saying that it's all the project the same, but I had to choose one number, so kind of average. We can expect also 50% reduction on carbon emission, 80% reduction on chemical, and actually 65% less on water consumption versus standalone. For these two last one, it's really related to, of course, lower use of water, lower use of chemical. We are going more and more into non-chemical type of water treatment. And those are benefits as well from common benefits from district cooling. Just want to discuss a bit about the benefit of brownfield district cooling. So we don't talk a lot about brownfield district cooling, which is basically development of district cooling in a brownfield area, so where you already have existing buildings. We often think about district cooling, district heating for new real estate, industrial developments, but actually the real opportunity, at least on the short term, is on existing buildings. If we compare the portfolio of existing area versus the coming new area in the next 10 years, you have much more existing area where we can have an impact by implementing those kind of technologies. So some benefits of those technologies of development in brownfield area. We minimize the risk of offtake. So this is very important for both parties, the clients and the developer. We size properly the system. We don't overestimate the cost for the client. And on our side, we limit the risk of future real estate development that are not always under control, especially when you have a crisis like we just experienced a couple of years ago. Another benefit of brownfield cooling district is the environmental impact, because existing area in general densely populated are in center of cities. New development, there are new development in center of cities, but in general they tend to be a bit around. So focusing on existing area, usually we would focus in center of cities where there is a lot of people, and so the more dense the area is, the greatest impact the DCS has. And similarly, I mean, it's kind of similar benefits. Having a district cooling and district heating developed in existing area will bring a sort of new sustainability impact on this existing area that can attract businesses, especially now the businesses tenants that are looking for offices. Most or some of them are really looking at the sustainability impact of their business, so including the offices they are in, and they would consider an office that is, let's say, more friendly, environmental friendly than other. So developing district cooling in brownfield area will also help to attract business and to give a sort of new birth for this area. So just before to deep dive, it's a big word, but just before to go through a few references that we developed worldwide, I just want to give you a few words on ENGIE. So ENGIE is a leading multinational utility company on the mainly three axes of development, IPP, I mean power, renewable energy, and district energy. Here are the few numbers to demonstrate somehow, although it's not easy to demonstrate with those kind of numbers, but that we have the expertise and experience as an energy utility player globally. We have a presence in 31 countries, including in the region, China, Thailand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, and some countries in the Middle East. And so, last point on ENGIE, we are not a manufacturer. We are not selling any product, manufacturing any product. We are a developer, integrator, designer of solution. So we really look for the best technologies on the market to fit the needs of our clients. We finance, invest on behalf of our clients through PPP model, concession model, and then we operate and maintain the plants, the cooling, the heating plants for the duration of the concession. In this kind of project, it goes from 20 to 50 years. This is what we will see just after in a few references that we have. So worldwide, we are the #1 independent developer of a cooling distribution network with 100 networks, mostly in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. So this kind of technology is more fitting for a tropical region, right? And #3 in district heating network, same as independent developer. And this is more for Europe and the US. In the region, because we are in the Philippines and I'm also based here, so in the region, Singapore is one of our new center of expertise for district cooling, especially since we developed recently we are developing a new district cooling. I will present that quickly. We have 5 networks, 2 in operation, 3 under construction, delivering, it's not 64, but 75,000 RT. It's my typo, sorry. Over 20 kilometers of distribution network, and we had to save 20,000 tons with those 5 district cooling, or will help because some of them are still under construction per year. So briefly, Megajana DCS is supplying cooling to 47 buildings in Malaysia. It's the first project we developed that we acquired partially from Cyberview, a Malaysian real estate developer that wanted to partner with an expert in DCS to optimize the operation of the district cooling. So one of the optimization that we've done is to install a thermal storage and also to boost the development in the area. So I think we acquired some stakes when the development was around 20 buildings, and we are now around close to 50 buildings. Same Malaysia, still Malaysia. Sunway City is a very recent development, greenfield development this time, that we are doing with the real estate developer Sunway for their own real estate developments, or mall, hotel, offices, and university, I think, with one target, which is to reduce 20% of energy consumption and carbon emission. It's not even a target, it's a commitment that ENGIE takes, but versus a baseline of a potential standalone system that would have been developed that is a bit theoretical. But ENGIE, on our development, we commit to the energy efficiency and net saving that the client, net saving that the district cooling can bring to the client. In the Singapore, recently we are developing, and we were awarded by GTC, I think in the second or third district cooling in Singapore. So we developed that same. It's a district cooling in a greenfield area where JTC is developing a new, you may have heard about it, super digital area. And so we are very happy to be in this kind of development because we are leveraging definitely from other synergy, other activities that are high technology in this area as well. And the same area, we are partnering with SIT, so a university campus, same tender, same project, not same clients, not same partner, but same type of target with 30% reduction of energy consumption versus a standalone system. So there are not so many developments in Southeast Asia, as I think Peter mentioned earlier. There are a lot in Malaysia, but in the rest of the countries, there are not a lot yet. But of course, with the energy price rising, with the technology and this kind of references that we can show to the private developer, public authorities, and we can show the benefits, we are hopeful that those technology will grow more in this region. And also the fact that Singapore government is now requiring district cooling to be deployed as part of new development is also a good sign that this technology is seen as a serious, cost-effective, and a real solution to fight climate change and to meet the government sustainability targets. We are in the Philippines, so I will talk a bit about this project as well. Northgate Alabang. I have a next slide, so I go quickly on the next slide. See, I have 6 minutes left. So Northgate Alabang, it's a project that I particularly like because it's one of the projects that I'm operating today. It's a joint venture with the real estate developer conglomerate that some of you may know, Philinvest. So this is a brownfield development. What we've done is to connect, to build a centralized plant in the middle of Northgate, Alabang cyber zone, not far from here, 20 kilometers south. And we connected this district cooling to the existing 16 building or 14 building at that time. Now it's 16 building in the area. Of course, well, we built the case to prove that it would make sense for Philinvest, for the tenants, for everyone. So here you have a few numbers of what are the outcomes so far of this district cooling versus their previous solution. It is the first, I think the only district cooling in the Philippines. So yes, it is the largest. But still, it's not that small. I would say 8,000 RT with installed today with a capacity to add 4,000 RT. All right, so now that's another size of a project versus what I've just shown. This partnership with Stabrid, and I want to talk about that because we talked about before tender partnership with real estate developer on brownfield project. Here we are talking about partnership acquisition. It's a way as well for us to grow our portfolio of district cooling and expertise. So we acquired 40% of Stabrid from Mubadala in 2017 with two objectives. First, to help them to optimize further their district cooling, and then to help them to fast track their growth, not only in Middle East, but also in Asia, which they are doing now quite well. And you will understand why they do it quite well, because actually they have today 83 district cooling plants. So it's really a huge company that obviously has the expertise as well to grow overseas and the right capability to do so. We are delivering with this 83 1.3 million RT, equivalent to almost 110 supply of cooling to Burj Khalifa, sorry. Okay, I will just pass to the next. I have two more references to show you, two concessions that are this time not only focusing on cooling, but also on the heating and electricity. So multi-utilities, I would say a bit more exciting because more challenging type of projects. So this is one 40-year concession that we secured with the London authorities. The beauty of this project is that it was for the Olympics of London of 2012. We started the project in 2010, and I think we just completed it just on time for the Olympics. Well, anyway, we had no other choice than to complete it on time. And so here you have some numbers of what type of, the scope that we developed there, with an upfront payment from ENGIE of around 115 million pounds. So here is the map. Of course, we won't go into the details, but you can have an idea of what are the buildings that are supplied by the district energy and cooling system. Two energy centers that are using interesting technology that we would not really be able to use in district, in real estate development in Asia, but for sure for industrial estates, it could make sense in at least in Southeast Asia. So absorption chillers, some biomass boiler, conventional boilers and chillers. And then there is the distribution part of 18 kilometers that is connecting all the buildings. And last but not least, I finish by this one. Usually we keep the best for the last. So this is a 50-year concession that we secured a couple of years ago in 2017. But it's still a key reference for ENGIE. So in my mind, I feel that it's only a couple of years ago. So we have acquired the existing energy system, utility system of Ohio University, which is supplying energy to 485 buildings. It's one of the biggest universities in the States. with a key target to reduce the energy consumption by 25% after 10 years of development, so by 2028. The upfront payment for this acquisition and so some investment to meet our target is around 1.2 billion US in a partnership between ENGIE and Axiom. And the last slide is just to show you a couple of scope on this project with, as I said, some electricity, gas, and electricity, cooling, heating, production. But in the distribution, we go a bit further with also distribution of gas and water. And the beauty of this kind of partnership with universities that we are in an environment a bit like Punggol Digital District in Singapore, where there is a lot of brain, there is a lot of innovation, there is a lot of research. So we created a center of expertise there, and it's really, from what I heard, because I've never been there, a real success story between the professor, teachers, and ENGIE as the operator. So, do I have a conclusion? Not really, so I will conclude on that. And I'm happy to answer your question if you have any later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste, for that introduction to ENGIE's operation and different kind of district energy schemes. And I think what we saw here also was I would say a little bit of the district energy schemes of the future, where we see high energy demand dense clusters pulled together in order to reach scale advantages. I think that is what we will see more instead of citywide systems with lower density and so on. Moving forward, I'm very happy to introduce Dan Bryan-Milson, who will talk about clean heating technologies. And yeah, please, and give a hand.
Okay, thanks. I know you probably think that I'm Bruce Willis's stunt double, right? Okay. Well, first, thanks a lot for inviting me to be here. Actually, I didn't realize until about a week ago that I was supposed to participate, but fortunately, a couple of years ago, I did some work in Kazakhstan. I did some kind of quick look survey, and I'll tell you about that. And I've been involved in some of ADB's geothermal projects before, helping get some financing for geothermal electric power projects in Indonesia and geothermal heating in China. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And when we talk about, we use the term technologies, but I think of this as applications, resources, and technologies. It's technical solutions. So the applications, what problem are we trying to address? What problem are we trying to solve? We're talking about space heating and cooling and maybe power generation, maybe combined heat and power, tri-gen, combined heat, power, cooling. The resources, we have geothermal and other renewable energy. And actually the acronym for renewables, if you want to make it easy to remember, it's Big Show. What's Big Show? I heard that from one of the Philippines Department of Energy managers about 5.5 years ago. So biomass, geothermal, solar, hydro, ocean, and wind. That's renewable resources. So Big Show. So we need art and we need Big Show. And then we can replace coal, oil, and natural gas, the Kong, the art of replacing Kong with Big Show. That's how we get to net zero. That's how we do the transition. Now, specifically, the technologies, and this is pretty specific to geothermal, but it's simple. It's pumps, it's heat exchangers, it's heat pumps, solar PV, solar thermal, whatever. We'll talk a little more about that. First, on geothermal. Okay, geothermal energy is everywhere. We've been conditioned to think about geothermal high temperature steam resources, which is actually not very big. The global potential estimate, I think World Bank's number is 80,000 gigawatts. Or no, sorry, 80 gigawatts, 80,000 megawatts, of which globally today, 15,000 megawatts is online. And it's mostly in 4 countries, US, Indonesia, Philippines. I think Mexico is number 4. Now, let's just for purposes of, the net zero discussion, right? Let's round that 80,000 up to 100,000 megawatts. And we get that 100,000 megawatts, 8,000 hours a year. And if we use that to directly displace coal, we only get 640 million tons a year of reduction. You guys check my numbers on that. I was just scribbling this. And I think that's right. Okay, but geothermal is everywhere, right? It's just we have to remember that we still have lower grade resources that can be utilized, but we're not going to build a project around a power purchase agreement for most of that resource. Okay, so it's counterintuitive maybe, but as you go down the list there, the lower the temperature, the bigger the resource. And I think that'll be clear here pretty quick. Okay, so one of the things that we looked at and talked about in Kazakhstan a couple years ago was this idea of how to develop geothermal energy. Well, we're not going to do steam turbines. We don't have that high temperature resource, but in the oil and gas fields, we know some of the oil and gas fields are pretty hot. So like bottom hole temperatures of 100, 120 degrees centigrade. Now we can convert that heat into electricity using binary generation technology, organic Rankine cycle kit, and I'll explain that in a second. And then depending on our location, we were looking at Aktau or Atirau. I can't remember which place, but the city, the urban area is almost on top of the oil and gas production. So we conceivably we can do power generation at this 110 degrees centigrade range, and then we can take the residual from the ORCs and use that for district heating. And then we still have heat energy to use for other space heating, which we could use for greenhouse agriculture and fish farming. Now, then the lower temperature, the 12 to 15 degrees C, that would be separate. Okay, but we could get 3 revenue streams in a cascade if we have the end uses co-located or located close enough together. So I think it's very important to think about this just in general. We combine different types of renewables. We take one resource, we got thermal resource, we can use it for more than one thing, but we really have to think about it. We have to want to do that. So quickly on ORC, this is a binary closed loop system where you've got a turbine generator that has a working fluid with a boiling point lower than the boiling point of water. And these are designed really to mate to diesel gen sets, but you can use them for heat to power on industrial boilers, biomass power plants, ships. You can couple these to marine diesels, and they look expensive on $1 per watt CapEx basis, but the levelized cost of energy, if you just take the generation output and divide it into the capital cost, we're looking at undiscounted levelized cost, so like 4, 5, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. It's not expensive at all, but you have to look for this and see the opportunity. And this is really a no-brainer where you've got diesel gensets running all the time. And this, why should we care about ORC? Well, one reason is that if we scale it up onshore, ORC technology is the same thing that's used for offshore ocean thermal energy conversion. So it's modular, we can drive down the cost through manufacturing economy of scale, and there's a synergistic development virtuous cycle that can be created between using ORCs onshore and eventually offshore. Now, geothermal district heating is actually pretty straightforward from a technology perspective. The geothermal wells are our fuel, which is prepaid, and the technologies that we need are pumps, heat exchangers, heat pumps. It's really not very complicated. Quoting Ted Turner out of context, even somebody from Cleveland, Ohio could figure that out. Not Columbus, Cleveland. Columbus is where the Ohio State University is. Okay, so now we looked at, again, we were looking at what the potential is in Kazakhstan. So here we've got a graph of the wellhead temperatures on the vertical axis, or the temperature, the downhole temperature, or this is the geothermal gradient, the temperature versus depth. So at the upper right, if we want to get to that 90 to 110 degrees centigrade range where we can do electricity from ORC, we need to go down to about 3,000 kilometers. For district heating in Jharkhand and Almaty region, it looks like we're going to have to go down to about 2.5 to 3 kilometers. And by way of comparison, the projects that I worked on in China, the geothermal heating projects there, we were only having to go down to about 1.5 to 2 kilometers, and we're getting 50 to 60 degrees centigrade water. So the space heating that can be covered is proportional to the flow rate at that temperature. So we still have that shallow geothermal, and again, based on the experience in China, and Byamba talked about this in Mongolia too. We have a pretty good idea of, you know, what the depth range is that's going to be economically viable. So generally in China, where the shallow geothermal has been done, maximum depth 200 to 300 meters to get to that 12 to 15 degrees centigrade range. Okay, now when we talk about geothermal, usually people say, "Oh, it's so expensive." Renewables, "Oh, it's so expensive." Expensive compared to what? How are we doing our analysis, right? Okay, the wells are the fuel, right? We drill the wells first to develop the resource, to access the resource. We prepay for our fuel. Now we do a conventional least cost analysis where we compare net present values. If we compare a coal solution versus a renewable solution, when we do that NPV calculation, we're discounting the future price of the fuel. So we're cheating. It's an accounting trick. It's not the right analysis. It doesn't tell us what we need to know. So we can do a very simple life cycle analysis to get an apples to apples comparison. So we prepay for fuel when we do geothermal. So let's look at the cost of prepaying for coal on a coal-fired solution. Now, in this example, this is one of the projects we looked at in Shandong province, China, the city of Dezhou, which is translated into English as Texas. The cost of the coal alone for this heating area is more than the base cost of the geothermal option. Now, we don't have a carbon tax. It doesn't matter. Let's add in the cost of carbon. So let's add the cost of CO2 to the cost of the fuel, and then we have a total cost that's much higher than the geothermal cost before we bring in the greenhouse gas benefit delivered by the geothermal project. So on a simplified life cycle basis, not only is the geothermal much cheaper, it pays for itself. Now, so in this case, we don't have to monetize the CO2 to justify doing the project. But if we don't do this analysis, we're not being honest about the evaluation of the options. I'll come back to this again to try to drive home the point. Now, one of the things I think ADB hasn't really done so much of this, and Byamba, talked in more detail about this, but we can do this shallow ground source heat pumps, and again, we've got to find that 12 to 15 degrees centigrade. So this is pretty common now in the Beijing urban area. So in the winter, you've got like -20°C, and in the summer, you've got up in the high 30s centigrade. So you can do this. You can either build it in, or you can retrofit buildings, and you get heating in the winter and you get cooling in the summer. And in hot climates, like in the Philippines or Indonesia or some other places, you can get year-round cooling with this. And this is really one of the most scalable things. And this is the resource that's really available everywhere. It's just that we got to be able to find that 12 to 15 degrees centigrade within maybe say 200 to 300 meters maximum depth. Now we've got geothermal, we've got the geothermal resource, but what are we running the pumps and the heat exchangers and the heat pumps on? If we're running it on the grid, then we're not really at zero emissions yet. But if we bring renewable energy to our site and run all of our pumps and heat exchangers and heat pumps, if we run everything on renewable energy, then we can say with a straight face, without any accounting légerdemain, that we actually have a 100% renewable heating or cooling solution. So we can, look at doing PV on roofs or ground-mounted PV in residential areas. We can add, if we need to add storage, if we're trying to bring, solar and wind, variable renewable energy on a specific site, maybe we need storage to help smooth out the electricity that's there. Maybe we add thermal storage. The one thing that I've been looking at in some detail here on the lower right are these solar thermal ACs. So this is the old-fashioned solar thermal collector that's coupled to a split AC. So the way this works is that solar energy, thermal energy, is brought to the compressor side, the hot side of the split AC, to take out electricity consumption in that part of the AC. So the suppliers that are providing these have done some independent verification, and they're showing that they're getting like 25, 30, maybe 30% electricity reduction during the day. Okay, now, if our grid supplied electricity is only 5 cents a kilowatt hour, that doesn't look like a very good investment. But if we're out on private resorts in the Maldives, which is where I've been trying to sell these actually, if we're competing, if we've got diesel supplied electricity that's 35 cents a kilowatt hour, the simple payback on these solar AC units is about three years. So it's really just proportional to the price of electricity that's being displaced. Michael had also, in our exchange of notes and discussion, talked about what you might be able to do with wastewater treatment plants, and this is pretty far out of my knowledge, to be honest. But there are ways and some kits available to try and do. We could either do retrofit or new build with different hardware, depending on what we're trying to do. I mean, obviously, if you build it in, usually it's easier to build in. If not, you may be able to retrofit. Again, it's heat exchangers and pumps. The technology is not really that complicated. It's not rocket science. So what I want to close with here is going back to this discussion, our theme of ASAP this year about getting to net zero and energy transition, right? We need to, at a national level, especially, countries need to think about their energy resources and their energy wealth. And I've put some numbers together for Kazakhstan on the coal, oil, and natural gas production. So we drill holes in the ground and we extract the money from those holes. So how much money is that? Okay, it looks like a lot, right? And we're not thinking about renewable as a way to make money. We look at this extractive and, oh yeah, we're a rich country. Well, some people are rich, I guess. I don't know, in Kazakhstan. But if we actually factor in a cost of carbon now and say, okay, we're actually, in Kazakhstan's case, almost all of these emissions are being exported, but that's scope 3 emissions, right? So in the UNFCCC dialogue, though, Kazakhstan says, well, hey, our emissions are like nothing. Azerbaijan, we're like, number 41 in the global rank in terms of national greenhouse gas emissions. Well, okay, yeah, that's true, except that you're exporting those emissions. So we have a fundamental accounting problem here. And if we penalize, if we add in the cost of greenhouse gas emissions, and if we, subtract the CO2 at $50 a ton from the coal, oil, and natural gas, the Kong, and then if we credit that same amount, if we credit at the same price, 50 per ton, to renewables, this is a comparison showing just harnessing 0.1% of the identified geothermal resource in Kazakhstan and using 1% of the land area for solar and wind that can be co-located at 25 megawatts per square kilometer solar and 5 megawatts per square kilometer wind. You've got room to do whatever else you want to do with the land in terms of agriculture or other land use, not in the cities, right? But if we look at that very modest penetration of renewables in terms of the actual resource in place, then, and if we assume that we can get $50 per megawatt hour for electricity, this is just a comparison of the gross revenue that we would be getting. So the energy wealth of Kazakhstan is not in fossil fuels, it's in renewables. But unless we actually do a graph like this and put them and compare them side by side and add in the cost of carbon, we don't get to the solution that we need. But this is the future in Kazakhstan. And the conference I went to there a couple of years ago that was hosted by the president, pre COP26, this is basically the message that he was trying to spread, was that today and for a while, Kazakhstan is still going to be a big oil and gas producer and exporter and a big coal producer. But the future there is in renewable energy and other minerals, not fossil fuels. So I'll stop there. Thanks very much. I've got a bunch of other slides in there that will be available for future reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for introducing a number of different clean heating technology solutions, to rephrase what you just said. Last but not least, I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Hironao Matsubara from ISEP, who will talk about innovative district energy developments in Japan. The floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm from Japan. Our institute is a non-government organization and independent think tank, also some consulting for the community power-based projects in Japan. So I talked about innovative district energy developments in Japan today. So Japanese government commits net zero emissions by 2050. And also our government's target 2030 GHG reduction target is 46%, and continue strenuous efforts to cut by 50%. So this is a sheer annual electricity generation and power source composition in Japan. So in 2022, this is the latest data for this. Renewable share is 22.7%, and other fossil fuel share is the LNG is about 30%, and the coal is 28%, and the other nuclear is 5% in 2022. And so share of electricity generated by solar PV increased to 10% in this year. And the government target of electricity generation in 2030 is 36 or 38%. So about the market of district heating and the other energy business in Japan. So this heat market is very small in comparison with the gas and the electricity markets. So this is because historically there has been absence of the heat policy in Japan. And this heating has been less importance in Japan electricity policy. As a result, oil, gas, and the electricity industry has been dominant in Japan's heat market and compete each other, which resulted in excluding renewable heat historically. So this graph shows the heat supply by this heating and cooling in Japan. So share of sales is cooling is dominant, so above half. And for business sector is the main target, main market of this district heating and cooling system. As a result, the residential market is very small for the heating system in Japan. So this is the heat source of this heating cooling in Japan. So a share of the renewable and the exhaust heat for the heating is 15% in Japan. Share of electricity for this heating is about 16% in Japan because of the high share of cooling. And this left graph shows the share of renewable exhaust heat for this heating in Japan. So largest share is for the waste. Seawater, about 90%. The second is waste, and also the RDF is some of the waste, kind of waste, and waste incineration about 16%, and also water biomass is 60%, and the seawater 10%, and river in about 10%. But main source of the heating is gas. Gas is liquid natural gas from the abroad. So this graph shows a heat of municipal waste incineration plants in Japan. Heat of municipal waste incineration plants are utilized mainly for internal facility and hot water, such as the spa and swimming pool nearby plants. But as of 2016, the number of plants is about, total number is about over the 1,000 in Japan. And 55% plants creating their heat from the waste incineration. And also they create the power, over 300 plants create the power from the waste. But it's not connected to district heating. The very few plants connected district heating network in the Tokyo area only. So this is the power grids in Japan. So each square is the maximum demand of the 10 supply areas and the operational capacity of inter-regional interconnection lines in Japan. So Tokyo area is the biggest area. Second is Kansai, maybe. but the real potential is very large in Hokkaido, in the northern area, and also Kyushu area or Tokyo area. It's not the urban area, it's a rural area. So this graph shows the ratio of the renewable energy in electricity supply and the demand by area in 2022. In this year, variable renewable energy, such as solar and wind, it accounts for 70% of annual electricity demand in Kyushu and Shikoku. Oh, sorry, I changed the slide. Oh, this graph shows, so sorry. So in 2020, in this year, variable renewable energy ratio exceed 100% during peak hour in Shikoku and Kyushu area. I think this is old slides. Maybe it's not updated. Okay. So this is a daily supply and demand curve in the Kyushu area in 2021, May 3rd. So there occurred photovoltaic curtailment or in the peak hours. But the area balance is very good. Yeah. So share of the renewable energy is very high. So this occurred by the order of control area and the curtailment. One is first thermal power plant is curtailed, and then they use the pumped hydro for the balancing, and also they use interconnection, and if it can't balance, so they use the VRE curtailment. So nuclear, hydro, and geothermal is a base load. So this is a map of the zero carbon commitment cities in Japan. So already 934 local governments, including Tokyo, Kyoto, and Yokohama, announced their commitment to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So these local governments represent 126 million people, which is almost 100% of Japanese population. So Tokyo Metro government commits net zero by 2050. So they established this zero emission Tokyo strategy. So this is the final energy consumption and the electrification rate in Tokyo, historic trends. So in Tokyo, electricity is half of energy use consumption. The gas is 30%, and oil is 20%. And also our commercial sector and the residential sector is a main part for energy consumption. So this is 100% renewable energy scenario by the NGO group with so our institute and Greenpeace Japan. So Tokyo area can be 100% renewable energy by 2050. by using the not only inside renewable energy, but they use some outside renewable energy, like offshore wind. So this is a heat map of Tokyo metropolitan area. This red part is the center of Tokyo. This graph shows the demand of district heating and cooling in Tokyo. It's not the updated data, but 5 years ago. So total heat supply of district heating and cooling system was 3.8 terawatt hour, which corresponds about 10% of heat consumption at the commercial sector in Tokyo. And cooling demand is 2 times larger than the heating demands of this heating cooling plant in Tokyo. So this graph shows the share of reliable and unused energy of this heating and cooling in Tokyo. So unused energy means some waste heat and river heat, geothermal heat, and the groundwater heat. But the average is 5%, not so high. It's very low because they use basically gas for the energy sources. So, right side plants, they using the electricity heat pump for the such unused energy sources, and also some waste incineration, exhaust heat. So this is a new project in Japan. So Ministry of Environment selected 26 plants as the decarbonization leading area of the first round in April 2022. So this year, April, this increased to 60 plants. So Mr. Environment planned to select 100 areas as the model of the community development with solving issues in decarbonizing manner. So this is one of the plan, the case of the decarbonization leading area plans. So this is a rural area, Ogata village, located in the Tohoku area, in the northern area in Japan. So this is a very compact city and also some rice area. In the center area of the village, installed solar PV and the storage batteries and of sufficient capacity in public facilities, commercial facilities, and prefecture university, village housing, and the residential housing. And hotels, which are large users of electricity, will be supplied with electricity from large-scale solar PV using their private lines. In addition, the village will utilize adjustment village-owned land to build a new large-scale solar photovoltaic plant and big storage batteries, which will be connected to the power grid. The project will also develop the biomass system using unused rice husks, which has become issues in the region. This project aims to decarbonize the heat sector through the biomass district heating system that utilize unused rice husks, which is the regional issue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hironao, for that introduction to Japan's energy sector in general, but also district heating and cooling. I think we can see that in Japan, district energy is often DHCS, district heating and cooling system combined, where cooling seems to be the driver of the development of these systems. Now we have come to the part where we will have a Q&A discussion. I thought we can try to gather around a little bit and make it a little bit more, how to say, familiar. And then we can ask questions to all the speakers that are still left in the room. Most of the speakers are still here, I can see. So yeah, come along. And if no one asks a question, we have several prepared. Now we start already. That's perfect. This is exactly how we would like it. So please introduce you with your name and where you come from and the question and who you would like to address it to.
Thank you very much. Daler from ADB Tajikistan Resident Mission. Thank you for very informative presentations to our presenters. My question is related to Kazakhstan case in regard to draft law on heating supply. And my question is about, does the law also consider the kind of demand side, meaning that does it also include, or does it also imply regulation of energy efficiency, like the retrofits of buildings or building codes or sub-laws or something like this? Thank you.
I presume it's the question addressed to me. You see, we are implementing the tool that is named Master Plan of Heating Sector Development. These master plans, they gonna have not only the technical stuff inside, yeah, all the economical, financial, tariff planning, everything it will contain. And there would be it would cover all the sectors. I mean, the production, transportation, and consumption. In Kazakhstan, we have separate law, which is actually working on developing this energy efficiency stuff. And we have separate law, which is about introducing the renewables. We have all the legislation based on those questions ready. But in our draft law, we're also addressing them. We're saying that when you will be making this, when you will be developing these master plans, you have to consider all the norms that exist in the existing legislation. So you can say that consumption side also will be part of our legislation. Thank you. And I also have a question about how do you call it? About the energy that geothermal energy. Sorry, getting a bit tired. Geothermal energy. Is there any research on what happens if whole world will use geothermal energy? I mean, what happens to the Earth? Is it going to be more cold, or is it getting hot, or it will be balanced? You know, because as we all understand, the energy has that quality that it doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it has to go somewhere. So in that aspect, is there any researchers on this question?
Well, yeah, I think there is. I'm trying to remember things that I learned in geology school in the 20th century. I think with respect to global energy demand, let me go back to the numbers I mentioned about the high temperature steam geothermal potential, right? Let's say that we're doing, we've got like 15,000 megawatts running today, and we are bringing heat up out of the earth, and we're harnessing, we're collecting and using maybe 35-40% of that with a open cycle steam turbine, and then we're re-injecting that water that still has a lot of the heat. So we're definitely bringing heat up from the surface, and some of that surplus heat is going into the atmosphere, if you will. And we can think about that just kind of the same way, thermodynamic efficiency of a thermal power plant if we're running on coal or gas or whatever. In terms of actually exhausting the thermal resource underground,
I think it's impossible because we can't imagine using that much energy. Again, I think what's important to remember on the steam turbine, what we have for geothermal power today, you know, we're recycling that water everywhere, right? If we do the shallow geothermal heat pumps for heating and cooling, we're you know, in the winter, we're bringing heat from underground up, and that heat gets dissipated. In the summer, we're putting heat underground. So in that system, I think in theory, we're balancing it out over the course of a year, and on an annual basis, we should be pretty close to a net zero heat flux. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add on, let's say, also to come back to your question, I mean, Alimjan basically provided you the answer. Just to add on, it's not possible, let's say, from a whole country perspective to cover the demand because it's local. The district heating demand or district cooling doesn't matter. But what Alimjan said, we introduced this tool of a master plan, and in the methodology for this master plan, usually you would start with the demand. What is the current situation? How many, let's say, buildings do you have in your city? How many are connected to the central system, whatever? What expected industrial development is foreseen? How many, let's say, or what is the development in terms of inhabitants in the next 5 or 10 years? Also, what are the plans for making the existing buildings more efficient? So also that needs to be considered, and it's a very important topic. And once you have that figure, which way the curve may go, then of course, only then you can start considering what, let's say, generation do I need? What might be the sources of generation? But again, this is very much, let's say, addressed in this master plan tool.
Sergey Zerkinbayev, Asian Development Bank. My question to Ronald. Yeah, you can keep the microphone. So it was 2 years journey in Kazakhstan, and a lot of challenges, a lot of lessons learned. So I'd like to ask you to share the most challenges what you have in Kazakhstan, and the key steps for success for the future projects. What would you recommend to do differently from both sides, from consultant side, from state side? Please share.
Well, actually, you should have addressed this question to Ilka because I was not, let's say, hands-on involved in the project. What is really, let's say, key to success is the close cooperation with the ministry, the trustful cooperation with the ministry as the main player in the country. They supported us a lot when reaching out, let's say, to the various local stakeholders. So that was really important. Another lesson which was learned, let's say, during the project, this, let's say, capacity building needs. I mean, you cannot really foresee it from the beginning. It just comes when you interact with the different stakeholders in the country and you recognize, okay, where might be, let's say, gaps in certain types of knowledge, and then trying to address this. So this, I would say, is also an important lesson which we learned. You can foresee some topics from the very beginning, but you have to adjust your program on the way, so to speak. Yeah, there have been some discussions with certain stakeholders when talking about renewable technologies, they were, let's say, rejecting this completely because it's unrealistic for Kazakhstan and this and that. But this is, you need a continuous process of, let's say, talking to the people, also bringing in expertise from external sources or jurisdictions, and ideally showing them really case studies where it has been applied, to very similar conditions, harsh conditions, let's say minus 20, minus 30 degrees Celsius or whatever, so that the people on the ground who need to implement the task really, let's say, follow you, so that there is no resistance at the ground. Of course, I mean, there will always be resistance because introducing such a new law will provide uncomfort to the people. I mean, they are used to the way they have been working so far, and this is something new is always, yeah, stressing people, so to speak, in which way this might be. And it's also important not to let's say, introduce it top down, but also to provide them some practical tools, some practical approaches, how they can do it. And just to add on this, I have, let's say, a negative experience right now in Germany, because there is a kind of, let's say, policy top-down approach from the Ministry of Economy. They want to introduce a new law on heating. And they said, well, all the individual household owners or others, they have to make sure that within, I don't know, 3 or 4 years time, they are using energy sources which are 65% minimum made up of renewables. And this caused an outcry among the household, let's say the house owners, because who can afford this? And this was, I mean, I was thinking maybe we should invite the German minister to Kazakhstan so that he learns that this is a multi, let's say, level approach is needed. So you cannot just introduce a law and, yeah, you have to do it. So you need to take the people on board. And this was really very bad, let's say, communication in that case here from Germany. Pardon? Yeah. I mean, this is. It was also coming at the very end of our project. If you remember, for instance, there was a request from the ministry to produce a couple of, let's say, knowledge materials, and one of these, let's say, knowledge materials was some short videos, films, which would be presented in TV. So it was around 10 or 12 films, I don't remember exactly, which we produced to make the broad public aware that, let's say, this law is under discussion in the parliament, what it, let's say, the main topics it will bring about, and particularly or specifically, let's say, the intended effects it should bring about. Yeah, so that they are feeling informed, and so that they can also influence to some extent the new development in their local communities, going to the decision makers, and then trying to make their voice heard for what needs to be considered from their perspective.
Thank you. No. Yeah, EDB also prepared a lot of knowledge products. It's available on YouTube. We can share the link. Also, Ronald didn't mention it, but under this project, we prepared the catalog of renewable technologies for heating sector. Very comprehensive catalog of technologies which we could use for heating sector? Individual, local heating system. So it would be easily available. Yeah, please. Ah, yeah. It's a strategy for PPP.
Yeah.
It's also available.
Thank you very much for the presentations. Very interesting one. My name is Clemencia Torres de Mestle, and I come from the World Bank from ESMA. I wanted, each presentation was very interesting for different reasons. And I have a question to two of the presentators, one on Kazakhstan. The question I have is the following. We have discussed a lot of what you did, and I had two main questions. One is that was kind of a transformation, right? And I understand you had the support of the ministry, but what was the factor that was decisive to decide to do it now? What was it, a policy decision, or was it a crisis? Because when you make such a transformation, it is not just a decision that happened. Was it a particular moment? So just lessons learned for others. That's one question. The other question is, you have discussed a lot how you approach the users, the campaign and everything. But in all those changes, there's usually winners and losers. And if your central heating or your district heating was based on coal, those who benefit from the coal, meaning the producers of coal, must have been losers big time. So how was that addressed? And how successfully was that addressed? For me, that is the main question. To change from coal to anything else is not only to bring something, but to displace coal. So what is happening with those who lose from the process? Last question there is, at the beginning, you mentioned that there was a change in the roles and that the local authorities lost a lot of the activities that they were doing and went back to the ministry. You can think that if heating was decentralized, there must have been good reasons and bad reasons, but good reasons why it was decentralized at the level of the authorities. Now, what was in this new way of doing things, what was the new role, if any, left at the local level? So those were my question to you. And to finish, so that I don't talk, for the Mongolia presentation, I would be very interested in understanding whether you had a different way of approaching the central part that was very dense. And you also mentioned that you have some development of the same kind in remote, much more dispersed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. First question is about what triggered this process of starting the law. As I said before, it was just initiation of our ministry initiative. We saw the situation in the sector. We saw that we have lots of problems, even if we were not like the main state body who is responsible for the whole sector. We were responsible only for the production side. And we saw that we need to have a separate legislation, because as for now, we have one law which is about electric power legislation, which regulates both electrical and the heating part. And that was not enough. And also we had some conflicts over there in the legislative part. So we decided that we need to have separate legislation, and the ADB supported us on that question. They have found a grant for us, and we have been working for almost 2 years on it's going to be 3 years this year. So we are now in parliament. That's the first question. For the second question, it was about parties who work on coal, right? We have to be realistic. Right now, we are not going to change everything to the other resources, and we are still going to work on a coal for a couple of years because we too much dependent on the coal, and it is obviously cheap, and we have problems with tariffs and so on and so forth. So and also we have to admit that we are not using all the coal that has been mined in Kazakhstan. The most part of the coal that is mined is exported to other countries. So we are not like we're not consuming all the coal that has been mined in Kazakhstan. We also have to understand that part. So later, right now, we have the legislation that is being discussed in Parliament. After it will be signed by President. All the parties, all the companies, and the local municipalities, they will start making their master plans, and the master plans will contain different case scenarios, and each scenario would have its benefits and its losses. And local municipalities, they will be discussing it with the people, with public. They will have public hearings. They will have all the regulators included in these public hearings, and they will decide which scenario they will use and in which direction they will move later on. That's the main idea. So they might have only energy efficient technologies based on the economical situation of the region. We cannot tell to the people who's living in there, who doesn't have enough money, we cannot oblige them to pay, I don't know, like 100,000 times more than they're paying today. It's just gonna make an explosion in that region. So we have to be realistic, and we hope that this planning, the proper planning, we're having these well-developed master plans will help us to see the bright future, as I said before. So, and the next question was about municipalities. You see, the municipalities, they have conflict of interest in part of controlling the technical control. We in Kazakhstan, our state bodies has different functions as it is in all the countries, I presume. So someone is responsible for the policy, someone is responsible for the tariff regulations, someone is responsible for technical monitoring. So technical monitoring part was on the local municipalities, but they had a conflict of interests. They didn't had some functions. It's long story, to explain all the details. So when I said that we are taking these technical monitoring, controlling functions to our ministry, I meant that we're taking it to our subdivision. We have also one committee, which is actually working on controlling the electrical part. So we're taking that function and giving it to the more professional people who doesn't have the conflict of interest, because most of the heating systems, they are usually in the balance of local municipalities. So they are not interested in making some how do you call it? Strafe. Yeah, penalties and fines of their own company, you see. So in that part, we think that this reform would bring more better results in the future. So that's the thing. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for the question. So actually, all of these clean heating sub projects are being implemented in remote areas, and but still some kind of small urban settlements, because all of the projects are financed by grant from certain funds. One of the requirements is to have to make that development or investment in economically underdeveloped regions. So that's why it's always in remote areas for those projects. But the idea that ADB and Ministry of Energy has is that if those projects get successful and show people that it's really working, and to show them this potential and opportunity. It will pave the way for to be implemented or scaled up broadly. Like it could be even like commercially viable technology. But currently, unfortunately, heat-only boilers or coal are largely subsidized. So it's for clean heating technologies, it's difficult to compete against like hugely subsidized coals. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Please. No?
My question to Mongolia, you were mentioning that several projects were implemented on the ADB funded grants, like social facilities, hospitals, yeah. How they are sustained? Who is maintaining them? Is it government or is it?
Firstly, just this after the system is like installed and commissioned, how the system is operated is that just the local governments are responsible for the operation and maintenance. And the idea is they should have some budget in their local budgets. And the project is also providing some capacity building trainings for local communities. The project implementation unit is trying to cover as many as people, because people change job easily, and then it might become difficult to find right person to be responsible for that system. Yeah, it's how it's maintained. In terms of cost, actually, after installing this system, operation cost reduces significantly. So cost-wise, it shouldn't be a problem. Does this answer your question?
I think it's a very important question, and I agree with the answer there too. I mean, I've personally been involved in some of the projects, and I think, how to say, sustainable capacity building is very important, and that thereby also the choice of technology is very important, because also to move forward to move back to the question mentioned a little bit before, if I understand correctly, the difference between working in the remote areas compared to the dense city areas. I mean, the absorption capacity in Ulaanbaatar is dramatically, significantly higher than what it is in the remote area. So it's really important to work on the sustainable capacity building. Normally of those projects, there are an operation organization there for the boilers that was there before. So, I mean, it is to look at, okay, how can we build that capacity? Would there be private sector partners, technology providers? Could there be service contracts? And this is in all the ADB projects. This is a very important component of these projects to secure that. But it's extremely important to, otherwise, I mean, I've personally developed more than 100 district heating and district cooling projects, big, large ones and small ones. And there are many that are implemented. After 10 years, they are worn down totally because they have not been maintained properly. So it's extremely important. And here we're talking about huge investments with lifespans of more than 30 up to 50 or even more years. So to achieve that, I mean, when we talked about the levelized cost here before, I mean, then we really need to maintain it. So it's a super important question. You can take the standing mic there if you want.
Everyone. My name is Bayan. I'm representing USAID Power Central Asia program, and my colleagues know that I'm from Kazakhstan. And 5 or 6 years ago, actually, I developed this terms of reference. I worked with ADB and they developed this initial terms of reference for this program, and I'm happy that finally this program is implemented by ADB. And my question is about institutional problems. We have, as you know, you conducted the study and you know the problem in Kazakhstan that we have renewable energy law, we have energy efficiency law, and we have now planning district heating law, and each of law lives their own life. And it is, while it's all about energy efficiency and clean energy. And my question is, if your study addressing the institutional problems, and how in particular are you providing particular recommendations to energy efficiency law, which is under the ministry, other ministry, not under the Ministry of Energy, or it's question not probably for the ministry, but we know that this problem exists because one thing is develop a good law, but another thing is a good enforcement. So, but I think ADB colleagues should also reply this question.
No, it's
Maybe
better.
ADB would add something maybe.
Yeah, it's better to
You see,
ask ministry.
it's again, we are again coming to the planning part. It's if you want to make something good, you have to plan how to make it. So if you have good frame for planning, I mean, as we have made the master plan, we have separate rules that shows the methodology how to make this master plan. So we have like the one methodology for everyone, so that they will not have ability to make big mistakes, you know. So in those master plans, we have the conditions for the ones who are making those master plans to use and to see all the requirements of the law which is related to the energy efficiency, and we also have the preferences for the renewables if it's like economically viable. Yeah, so if it's economically viable, we have set the rule that, well, we say that if it is economically viable, you have to put the renewables in your master plan. That's the main condition. So we have, you see, we have binded everything together. And if you know, I know that you know, our renewable law is not about how renewable work. It's about how to support the renewables. So we, in the renewables law, we have some norms that says that we have to support the renewables in all the spheres, like it's in whether it is electrical part or heating part. So in that we can say that all these three laws would be interconnected and interrelated through these master plans. So it shouldn't be a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, whose responsibility should be, whether it will be Minister of Energy responsibility of enforcing the energy efficiency in district heating, or it will be the Minister of I forgot the industry. Yeah, the institutional problem actually.
Yeah, you see, it's not for us. Unfortunately, it's not for us to decide like which ministry should be responsible for that. It's about for Prime Minister to decide. But as I understand the concept of implementing the energy efficiency legislation, it's about making the restriction and conditions and make all the technical documents, and others should follow these requirements, and that's how it works as far as I understand. So I think in that regard, our limitations and restrictions that we put inside the master plans, where we say that you have to follow the legislation about energy efficiency, should be enough to cover all the questions that you are asking me.
What about EDB, the CEREC? I mean, my question is your consultant there
I know
addressing
something
addressing these
that
questions?
ADB
Because I'm really, I worked for district heating, then I was in 2009, I was part of a working group developing energy efficiency law. And then I moved to district heating. I was developing these terms of reference, and then finally the project that was issued. And now I'm with renewables, with renewable energy law. And I know all this problem from inside, and it is really important that consultants provide and connect all this. I mean, we as banks, as USAID, as donors, we address all these issues comprehensively. One thing is technical solution, like recommendations. Another thing is institutional problems. There still it is, because without resolving institutional sources, institutional problems at the level of the legislation, at the level of specific responsibility for the institutions, the enforcement of any best like technical solutions will be difficult. I think all consultants should understand this.
Yes, Bayan. Yeah, Ronald, would you like that?
I've just have to add, let's say one keyword more or less. So as part of the, let's say, drafting of the law and the stakeholder communications, there was also done a regulatory impact assessment. So we had a local law firm, which was very much working in the energy sector, and they together with the, let's say, concerned other stakeholders did this regulatory impact assessment. I don't know exactly what had been done, but this was to avoid that, let's say, different laws define different, let's say, responsibilities. So to smoothen the process, but I'm not up to the details because I haven't been involved there.
Yeah, Bayan knows something about Kazakhstan. So that's why these questions raised. Actually, there was a huge discussion. Yeah, there was a huge discussion between the Ministry of Energy, ADBs, and consultants about implementation of this legislation. So the main question was who should be responsible for tariff setting? And the one option was to let's keep these tariff setting functions on the local communities, local akimats level. The second option was onto the Ministry of Energy level, and third option on the current situation using current situation, which the Committee of National Regulation under the Ministry of National Economy was responsible for tariff setting. And there was a battle about this tariff regulation. ADB position was to keep this under the separate regulator, not under the Ministry of Energy, because Ministry of Energy should be responsible for policy making. And local akimats also, they don't have any capacity actually, and they have a conflict of interest to do this tariff setting, to ensure this social stability, reliability of heat supply, and so on and so on. So this is a conflict of interest. So, but our main recommendation to the government during this discussion was to establish a separate regulator, which would be responsible for this tariff setting in all these natural monopoly sectors. Again, as I said, it's evolutionary project.
I have a follow-up question, actually. I mean, you did legislative due diligence first, and then you made an impact assessment, you say. Is there any outcome from this project that suggests any revision in other regulations or policies or things like that? Is that something you're aware of, that this suggests some adjustments in order not to be contradictory? It's just for curiosity.
In Kazakhstan, I think it's also all over the world. It's the same procedure. Whenever you make some new legislation, you have to make another draft law, which actually has to change all the other laws that are getting in conflict with the main law. So we, in this project, we made three draft laws. First was the main law. Second one was the following up law. We call it, like in Russian, it's called like that. And the third law is the Codex of Administrative penalties. Yeah, administrative law. Yeah, the code. So that code is actually has to be changed also, but with only with another law, a separate law. So we have made three draft laws with the Dornier Group.
Thank you very much.
And I wanted to add to the question that Serik had before to the Ronald addressed. I think in the future, if anyone is going to have like something similar, you have to put in the beginning, in the TORs, you have to put some flexibility to that, because you see when the approach was perfect. I mean, the technical задание. Was perfect. I mean, everything was considered we had the technical due diligence, legal due diligence. We had all the time schedule was set. Everything was perfect, but we haven't considered the possibility of changing of other laws and other procedures. To be precise, like our Ministry of Justice, when we started developing this law, the rules of making the legislation was had one procedure, and when we were in the middle, it changed once, and in the after 6 months it changed twice. So we had to develop some documents 2 or 3 times because of that. And these things they made huge problems for us. I mean, in conducting between our helpers as Dornier and the ADB, we had to understand how to move, because it doesn't have these conditions in the contract. And if you're gonna have something similar in the future, you have to have some flexibility due to some unwanted or unknown circumstances. That's my only recommendation.
Hi, yeah. I actually have a question to Dr. Matsubara. And it was interesting to know you showed the map of Japan and all the municipalities that have net zero targets, almost all, or 97%, I believe. Have they all already, prepared roadmaps, how to achieve these targets, or is that under preparation?
Now, unfortunately, no. These almost 900 municipality just have a commitment for net zero by 2050. So now they try to make a new master plan, and also a new roadmap to 2050. And so master plan for 2030 and the roadmap to 2050. So now they are making.
And is district heating or district cooling, you think they will be a part of these master plan and roadmap?
But in that plan, that they of course they include the photovoltaic or wind power, so power sector included. But heat sector is it's difficult to be included. So, but some municipality try to make a plan for district heating or some heat sector, but
right. Okay. So there's potential for improvement.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just another question. Jump in here. For NG. I think yeah, it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about how it is to develop district cooling in Southeast Asia. John Baptiste. Yeah. No, yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, so I think I'm interested to hear a little bit about your experience, how it is to develop district cooling projects in Southeast Asia. You know, what kind of barriers exist, and you know, what could cities improve, you know, to make it easier to develop. And yeah, can you share some of your experiences from the region?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Peter. Well, in the region, so we have developed we are operating 3 district cooling and 2 are under construction. So our experience is limited. But from what we've seen, depending on the countries, it's very different. I mean, of course, the regulation policies are different. When we take Singapore, where the government now is requiring the new developments to have a district cooling, is really different from a country like Philippines, where the developments are led by private company families. So in Singapore, from what we've seen, all the district cooling that we have developed and that has been developed have been through tenders led by the authorities. In the Philippines, there is only one, again, district cooling, but clearly the way that we see today to develop district cooling is to discuss with those actors that are operating today real estate, industrial estate area, and that are also planning the new projects. And in the Philippines, those actors, again, are the families. So we are discussing with the families and, I mean, Fininvest and other families. So this is the way we are seeing the development in the Philippines. How the government can support typically in the Philippines, where it's such led by families, I don't really know, to be fair. And then a country like Malaysia. So Malaysia, the development has been a bit different. They had a lot of development on district cooling. I think 30 you mentioned earlier. I mean, a lot. In comparison with some countries, it's not that many, but in Southeast Asia, it's a lot. So the way we are seeing the potential today, the main opportunity is really to partner with those asset owners to really have a major retrofitting optimization of those district cooling prior to start developing new district cooling. So this is how we would approach the market. And I think this is how the players are approaching the market as well in Malaysia, to strengthen first the district cooling that they have, make sure they are using the latest technologies, they are using the latest standard operational procedure to operate in an optimized way the district cooling there. And once this is done, they may think about the new wave of district cooling for the new real estate development.
Great, thank you for those insights. Let's hope also that the governments make use of district energy as you know, in their road to the energy net zero targets in Southeast Asia as well. Okay, thank you. That's all for me.
Then I will quickly jump to the closing remarks. We are overdue, but I think it's great because we have a great discussion. So my closing remarks is just I want to thank everyone for this great session. It was super interesting to take departure from the work that you're doing in Kazakhstan and then look around and see other countries and international outlooks and different angles and aspects of development and the transformation to towards a carbon neutral future through clean energy solutions, and here clean heating and cooling. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone, and we can give each other a big warm applause before we take evening. Thank you very much, everyone.